I always wish I could go on a cruise, but I've never been on anything like that. So, never even been on a vacation, never been to Disney. I went to Disneyland for work, but never with my family. Some people think that that's normal, but really, I always wish I could go on a cruise. There I am again. I've never. There we go. It's not absolutely normal that people go on vacations. That's just what the media tells you. Well, we never
Uh,
did that. We would go camping.
Well, not everyone has been to Scotland either.
Oh, that's true too. That's true too. Or Germany or France or any other places, England,
There you
um,
go.
that I
Wow.
went to at work from work. So
So are we streaming now, Lynn?
yes, we are live on YouTube.
Okay, because it just popped up on my phone as well. So thank you, thank you. My name is Susan Michel, and it is great to be here on Gather for a Course in Miracles on Pal Talk on YouTube. I am the author of Surrender to Joy from Suicide to Serenity. It is based on the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which we are all here to study, to learn, to embody the knowledge of. And I will say, when I embody its knowledge, I feel the peace, love, joy, and happiness of God. And when I do not, I struggle. And even though I've been a Course in Miracles student now for 35 years, it is challenging to connect to that peace, love, joy, and happiness on a consistent basis. And I am here with my wonderful soul sister that is such an amazingly clear channel, Karen Parente. How are you, Karen?
Hi, Susan. I'm doing well. Can't really complain. Happy to be here. Um, yeah, there's not too much to really say, but I'm doing well and progressing in my recovery with my knee surgery. I'm riding a bike now, which is really good because I couldn't get the wheels going, and now I got the wheels going, and that feels really good. So slowly but surely, I'm coming along. So that makes me feel better. Mentally,
Well,
physically, when I'm doing well physically, it always seems to make me feel better mentally.
Well, you always talk about your physical challenges. You're so clear and you're so wise, and I always feel uplifted by your energy. So whatever your body is experiencing right now, it must be for your highest good because I just see you growing in leaps and bounds, and I commend you. I think that's so wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. It takes one to know one too, remember.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like my challenges lately have been more emotional. I know emotionally I tend to swing, and it's challenging. But when I make it to the other side of my blocks, I feel more peaceful and more empowered. So it's kind of worth the effort to connect to ACIM's teaching. And I will start with the introduction of my book, the way I usually do. And what I write in my introduction is my passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with three simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. And the reason there is nothing to find in this world is because there is no world. You know, that uh, paragraph that I started with kind of goes hand in hand. I'm looking down into my Course in Miracles workbook. And if we go by the lesson of the year, today is January 13th. We are on lesson 13. And what today's lesson states is a meaningless world engenders fear. So I actually practiced the lesson of the day today. And it's just so important to realize that we're always creating what we experience in life by the dominant thoughts in our mind. That's why it's so important to plug ourselves into our God socket each morning so we can start each day from a place of peace, love, joy, and happiness. Because again, if we're coming from a place of lack and we're trying to satisfy our heart's deepest longings with something in the world, it's never, ever going to work. I remember hearing on a podcast today, a Course in Miracles podcast, that Jim Carrey said that it's too bad that everybody can't get exactly what they're looking for in the world, because if they did, they would know firsthand that the world has no power to satisfy them. So whatever we think is going to complete us in the world cannot complete us, because the only thing that can bring us the peace that we're searching for is that connection with our creator, right, Karen?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's always our thoughts, and I love that you opened up with that it's always our thoughts that really create our experience and our sometimes we believe our thoughts. And that's where I've been practicing, looking at those thoughts and knowing that I do not have to put belief in them. And that's really helpful because, thoughts like when you talk about the emotional upset, for me, I know exactly what that feels like because I've been through major depression and thinking of that major depression. I just went through a short little depression, like a small depression. Um, and I tend to get depressed. I have that tendency to get depressed. So I really need to really work on myself and notice my thoughts and look at my thoughts because it's something I think my whole life I've had issues with. I went through it with pregnancy. I had that um, it was a really bad depression, postpartum depression afterwards. And that's where it kind of started for me. But periodically, I can go through it if I'm not careful. So I really have to look at my thoughts, watch my thoughts. And that's the key. The key is these thoughts really do not mean anything, and they are only the meaning that we give it. And that has helped me tremendously. And really, just the idea that they're not my real thoughts is everything to me because I used to believe my thoughts, like sincerely believe my thoughts. And that's where my depression got really, really bad when I had major depression disorder. Because even in counseling and everything that I went through, I had great counselors. It took a while to break me through because I was in such belief of my thoughts and back then, this was back in like early, I'd say like 2010, probably 2011. Um, my counselor helped me to look at those thoughts and helped me to undo the belief. So I think that's where the freedom comes from the emotional distress that you were talking about, because I really, from my personal opinion and experience, it's the belief that causes the emotional distress. What do you think?
Oh, I can relate to everything you just said, everything, because I have suffered from depression in this lifetime as well. That's how my book starts, Surrender to Joy, From Suicide to Serenity. It starts with my suicidal depression, which was a great learning lesson for me. I mean, I actually got what I wanted. To go back to Jim Carrey's quote, it's too bad that everyone can't get exactly what they want, because if they do, they'll realize that it cannot give them the joy that they're searching for. Well, that's part of what led to my suicidal depression, because I felt like I lacked something, and I did not know about A Course in Miracles at the time. I was about 20 years old. So I thought that if I could become a fashion model, that would make me feel important. And at 20 years old, I became that fashion model that I aspired to become. And it did not make me feel important. It just kind of exacerbated my insecurities. And when I realized that getting what I wanted in the world did not satisfy me, I lost all hope. And that was part of what led to my suicide. Of course, there was many other factors involved that I didn't realize at the time. Um, but there were so many lessons that I learned at 20 years old. Part of it was the world cannot satisfy me. If I get what I want, it's not going to make me feel any better unless I have that internal connection. Another lesson that I learned is that it's important and to honor our our feelings that are not of God. Even though love is our only reality, it's also important to honor those painful emotions. I still, after reading A Course in Miracles a few times, don't know where exactly in the text it talks about feeling painful emotions. I do know that one paragraph that I quote often talks about the darkness coming to the light. That's as close as I can get in the text of A Course in Miracles about the importance of honoring painful emotions. But even though those painful emotions are not real, I do know through personal experience that we have to allow ourselves to feel those feelings before we're able to get to the other side of them. So, uh, when I am feeling depressed, sometimes there is some kind of painful emotion in my psyche that I'm not allowing myself to feel, because through my studies I've realized that depression is a block, and I still experience it. You said you just had a mini depression. I just had a mini depression too. I still experience it. And a lot of times when I'm experiencing these little mini depression, there's something in me that I'm not allowing myself to feel, and if we're feeling angry, it's important to let that anger out. If we're experiencing sadness, it's important to embody the sadness so we can release it. The guest speaker on Sunday with Monday, was Amy Torres yesterday, and she's such an amazingly clear course teacher. I remember her saying how important it is to embrace sadness, because sadness can be very cleansing. And that's what I find. Like when I go through bouts of depression, when I feel blocked, sometimes there's an underlying feeling that needs to be felt. Um, any thoughts on that, Karen?
Absolutely. Well, suicide depression is very, very serious, and you came through to the other side. And that is a big accomplishment because a lot of people do not. Um, so I experienced that with my husband, ex-husband at the time, a major, major depression that was really showed signs of bipolar, which he was never diagnosed with, but there was a lot of bipolar behavior, and that led to a brutal suicide and devastating because people that commit suicide don't realize what they leave behind. It's like a grenade goes off in everyone's life. So that's what prompted my major depression. But I have to say, when that depression started, I was very, what's the word I want to use? I was a functioning depressed person, very functioning. I went to work. I was depressed, but I was working and I was doing well, and I was still above the battleground, so to speak, and in a lot of ways. I still was also in denial and shock. But for me, looking at those thoughts that you said, like really not denying them is very important. And I believe I had to go through this depression, the initial one. And I do believe everything is for us. I really do. I ended up having a fall, a really bad fall, and I had a traumatic brain injury. And that's what increased my depression to major depression. It wasn't major depression until this fall. And that's when things became really, really, really bad for me. And so it took a lot of time for my brain to heal, and I had to learn how to really talk again and do all this other stuff. But I think that it was a protection for me. I think it was a sort of protection. It might sound crazy, but it actually protected me. I needed to go through that. And then the counseling and everything else. And I went through lots of stuff, but I finally got through that major depression. But what you said about, it's important to honor our feelings because our feelings, of course, they're not facts, but we're experiencing them and looking at them for what I've learned to do. And this took me a long time too. I've learned to look at them gently. I learned to be very light on myself because I was very hard on myself. And that's what and when I was in therapy, my counselor would say to me, Karen, put down the hammer and pick up the feather. You're so hard on yourself. You're so hard on yourself. Why are you so hard on yourself? You couldn't have changed anything. And that's where depression comes from. Depression comes from us wanting things to be different, wanting something else, wanting something to change, not being happy with the way things are. And so I learned to, like you said, look at them, honor them, be gentle with myself, recognize that it's not true, but I can still I still need to look at them. And with the Holy Spirit is who I choose to use. For me, it's my higher self, looking at them with the Holy Spirit. Then I can see things differently. I can see that they're actually thoughts that I made up. But I have to go through that process first of looking at them because they feel so real. They seem so real, just like my physical experience with healing the body feels so real. And it is real. It is real when you're going through it. But how do I want to react to this? Do I want to or how do I want to respond? I can respond or react. I can react and I can be angry and I can be resentful and I can, wish things were different, or I can just say, well, this is what's happening. What do I need to do? Well, right now I have ice on my knee and a TENS unit on my knee, and my computer's acting crazy, so it's all working perfectly because I wouldn't be able to sit at the table anyway. So everything always happens perfectly when we don't deny what we're going through. Um, in the course, there's a lot on depression. I can't think of where it is, all of it, but I know there's one spot that I'm pretty familiar with, and there's a place in chapter 4, section 4, this need not be. And he says in paragraph 3, when you are sad, no, this need not be. Depression comes from a sense of being deprived of something you want and do not have. remember that you are deprived of nothing except by your own decisions, and then decide otherwise. And to me, that is like the course in a nutshell. It goes along with, I'm never upset for the reason I think. I think I'm upset because of A, B, or C. You can fill in the blank, whatever you think is upsetting you, but it's my thoughts about it that are upsetting me. And it's a decision, as you said, not to listen to the thoughts of God, but to choose to listen to the thoughts of my own making, which are not of God. So it's a decision. And when I recognize that I am making this decision and I am doing this to myself,
Mm.
guess what? There's times when I don't care. When I'm so in it, I don't really care because I can get that deep into a depression where I'm going to feel it till I go through it. And I know what I'm doing and I'm doing it anyway. And I go through that. I go through that at times. But ultimately, I
Mm.
get to that space where I could see peace instead of this. I am doing this to myself and I want to see peace instead of this. And then I ask to help me see this differently. And I do. I do see it differently, but there's a process that I usually go through. And sometimes in that process that my ego could be very resistant and not want to not want to go there. I'd rather be right than happy. This is really happening. Leave me alone, Holy Spirit. I want to go through this right now. And that's what sometimes I need to do, and then I can really laugh at it with Holy Spirit, like, see what you do to yourself. Why this need not be. This need not be. So recognizing that we're doing this to ourselves is so helpful because even though we go through it, and we can still be stubborn like a little child wanting his, whatever he wants when he wants it, throwing his little temper tantrum, he gets over it when he realizes mommy's not going to give it to him. So it's kind of like that. Thanks.
Yeah, you made me think of last night, that line in A Course in Miracles, would you rather be right or happy? Sometimes our ego just really, or I should, speaking for myself, my ego really wants to be right. And I went through a day or two of just having buried anger. And then last night, something triggered that anger. And it was very apparent to me that the trigger in itself was meaningless, but there was something in me that was just so off that I needed to let the anger out. I mean, it was really ridiculous, and thank God my husband was in his right mind at the time, so he didn't take me seriously. He's a new Course in Miracles student, meaning he's been studying it for about 5 years now. And thank God he didn't take my angry outburst seriously, but I just got jealous. I got jealous that we were supposed to start the movie at 6:30, and my husband was having a conversation with friends that actually started out to be my friends, and then now they're his friends, which is what it is. I mean, I'm glad that they're his friends, but he was talking to these friends of ours when we were supposed to be starting the movie. So he was on the phone with our friends till about 7. And I was just so angry. And I was so jealous that they were taking his time away from the movie. And I knew it was irrational, but there was just something in me that felt jealous and something in me that felt deprived. And I knew it was irrational. Thinking back on last night, it must be something from my childhood. But I really, when he got off the phone with our friends, I really lashed out at him, again, in an irrational, illogical way. And thank goodness he did not take me seriously. That's all I can say. He just kind of listened to me and said, Susan, that makes no sense. What you're yelling about makes no sense. So it's interesting how the ego can act up the way it does. And it's important to show compassion for ourselves, um, because there was this underlying anger that needed to be heard. And today was better. It was definitely a better day. I started the day with prayer, meditation, and I've been listening to a lot of Course in Miracles today, and it's making more sense, much more sense than it did yesterday before my angry outburst. But I just believe that darkness needs to come to the light in order for healing to occur. My favorite paragraph from the text of A Course in Miracles is chapter 1, Roman numeral 4, the escape from darkness, where Jesus writes, the escape from darkness involves two stages. First, the recognition that darkness cannot hide. This step usually entails fear. Second, the recognition that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This step brings escape from fear. When you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. I mean, God is grateful for our transparency. God is grateful for our honesty, because only by showing Him what needs to be healed can healing take place. That's what I believe. And as you said, Karen, it's so important to show compassion for our wounds, because that's what darkness is. Darkness is where we have been hurt. Um, you know, Gabor Mate, who I have been listening to a lot lately, he's a doctor, he's a Course in Miracles student. He talks about trauma. He says that trauma isn't necessarily what happened, but trauma is the wounds that we hold on to in response to what happened. It's the pain points in our unconscious mind that have not been healed. So a lot of times when we get triggered in life, it's actually bringing these pain points to the surface so we can release them. And that's where it is so important to look at our wounds, to look at our pain points with the Holy Spirit, so we can show compassion for where we have been hurt, because love heals all. And it's so important not to judge ourselves. It's so important not to judge other people. It's so important to love ourselves. And if other people make mistakes, and we can look at them with the vision of Christ and forgive them, that's how healing occurs. Healing occurs through forgiveness. No matter what mistakes I have made, forgiveness heals all, because what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is love. And by extending love to the pain points of our inner child, of our wounded inner child, that's how true true healing occurs, right, Karen?
Absolutely beautiful. Everything you said was so perfect and beautiful. And forgiveness is the great need of this world. He tells us in one of my favorite lessons, lesson 46, that God is the love in which I forgive, that forgiveness is the great need of this world because it's a world of illusions. And he says it's the only meaningful prayer because forgiveness does give us that opportunity to see things differently and to see that what I thought my brother did really didn't occur. And this was a perfect classroom for you. I love when things like this happen. I love when things happen that we get so annoyed about, and when we get upset about things like this, we know that this is definitely for our learning and it's coming up to be healed. I first of all want to thank you for being so honest with what you experienced yesterday. I think that was a beautiful just a beautiful honesty of your on your part. When you I could feel everything you were saying when you were sharing it about when your husband, first you said my husband was on the phone with, they were my friends, now they're his friends. And so you had a little bit of jealousy there because wait a minute, they're my friends and now you're talking to them and you're spending time with them instead of me. What about our movie date? What about us? Um, I could completely feel everything while you were sharing. It was so perfect. And then of course your husband saw nothing wrong. He was doing nothing wrong. It was innocent. It was just that conversation got a little further. He didn't think much of it. He knew he was still going to watch the movie with you. And but you were feeling deprived, and this is what I love about knowing the Course in Miracles and knowing everything that you just said, that this is to be healed. So I love what the doctor you mentioned on trauma. Now, I looked him up last week and I actually have listened to him in the past because I have been through a lot of trauma and I love him. I think he's amazing. It's been many, many, many years and I do remember him and he's excellent. And what he said, and it's the trauma is not really I'm paraphrasing what you said. It's not really, you know, what happened. It's how we're holding on to it, our response to what happened, and that's what needs to be healed. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the unhealed, and it's the guilt. It comes down to what the Course calls guilt, and the guilt is the self-hatred. The guilt is the stuff we don't want to look at. And I'm just thinking of you because I listen to you and I think I love your honesty and I'm very much that's why I think we probably get along so well because I'm the same way. I come straight from the heart and straight from my honesty. And I remember you sharing a while back about when you were a little girl on the schoolyard and feeling excluded from your friends, and that feeling that we all can relate to that at some time in our lives. And I'm not any psychiatrist or anything like that, but it just seems to me that there's something there that still needs healing, that still comes up. And that's beautiful that it came up and you threw that little temper tantrum, like that little girl came out, as that child, and your husband was like that. He was in his right mind and saw right through it and was able to actually see that it was just nothing. It doesn't make sense. It's not true. You're making this up. And we're bringing the past into the present. And that's how we know it's not true because it's not happening now. We're making up a story now that's not healed from the past. And this is what we do. And this is a vicious cycle that needs the beautiful, looking that you said. And I agree with your, being compassionate with ourselves, being patient with ourselves, not judging ourselves, treating ourselves like that little child. That needs the healing. Someone said that to me recently. I can't think of who it was. It might come to me, but they said, Karen, you're there to heal that little child. That little child. Just hold that little child. That's what needs to be healed. She's coming around again to help you to heal that. And that's what we all are. We're still little children that just want to be healed. So that was so really good that that came up for you, because that's what that I believe that, what the course says about trials are about lessons. They will keep coming around until they're healed. And then we can learn to choose again sooner, which we are learning here, because it's just not true. It's just not true. And I love the escape from darkness too. I think that's a great paragraph that you read. And I don't have my book in front of me, but I have a lot of notes on that. Maybe we can do that one time just together, go over that paragraph, because I have so much on that that is so interesting. Because that paragraph is really the escape from these thoughts. It's escape from these dark thoughts that we are the cause. We are the cause. It's never the situation. It wasn't anything else outside of us ever. And that's what we're learning. So I just really appreciate what you just shared. It was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. Yeah, and thanks for remembering that story about me being bullied on the playground in elementary school. You said that I couldn't play with my friends. That's kind of that's kind of a nice way to see it. My friends at the time, I didn't feel as though they were my friends. At the time, I felt like the scapegoat, like the outsider. And I think that has set the stage for a lot of the lessons that I have needed to learn in this lifetime, because going back to my little angry outburst last night, I mean, I felt like I was on the outside. I was not important. I was being ignored. And it was extremely painful. It was an extremely painful feeling. And there was just so much anger attached to that feeling. And I can remember it clearly because it just happened last night. And it's interesting, when we allow those irrational, uncomfortable feelings to surface. Speaking for myself, I knew that I wasn't making any sense. I knew that the words that I was screaming were completely irrational, but the feeling was just so strong. I needed to get that anger up and out, because it was blocking me from connecting to source energy. And again, I remember some of the words that I was saying, like, why don't it was my friend and her son. Well, why don't I just leave and they can move in and you can all live together like one big happy family, and I'm gonna leave. I knew it was just crazy, just really crazy stuff. But I was so angry, and I am truly blessed to have a husband who was strong enough to not take me seriously and to love me despite the fact that I was spouting off irrational stuff. I will say, before he became a Course in Miracles student, he wasn't able to do that. If the same episode happened 10 years ago, he probably would have tapped into the anger and we would have gotten into an argument. But based on his Course in Miracles studies, he was able to uh, hold my feelings. He was able to allow me to have my feelings without tapping into the anger. That's what I think a good therapist is able to do. A good therapist is able to allow us to have our feelings, because that's how healing occurs. Healing occurs when we can just have our feelings, and when that other person can just be there to witness our feelings and love us despite our feelings and our irrational feelings, and show compassion for our pain. And that's what my husband was able to do last night, and I'm so grateful for that. But again, I think his Course in Miracles studies have given him the capability of doing that. Because if this had happened before he started studying A Course in Miracles, I think he would have gotten caught up into the anger, and he would have taken it personally. So that's the best thing we can do for someone when they're going through feelings is we don't want to um we want to be there and show compassion for them. We want to be there and show love for them. We want to be there and just allow them to and validate their feelings in a way, but not get sucked into the darkness, because it's an illusion. It's not real, and the best thing we can do as a friend is just to be there and let the person go through whatever they're going through, and show compassion for them and show love for them. And this is how ultimately we heal, I believe. Anyway, I don't know any other way to do it. That's why I always quote Araya Mountain Dreamer's lines in her invitation poem. I want to know if you can sit with pain, yours and mine, without trying to hide it or fade it or fix it. And from a Course in Miracles standpoint, the pain is not real, but it's in our unconscious mind, and we have to allow that those pain points, those pain points that are hidden in our unconscious mind, to surface so they can be released. And we all have different pain points that have not been healed. We all have them. I mean, A Course in Miracles tells us that we all are part of God has but one son, and we are all part of that same sonship. So when you go deep into my mind and you go deep into your mind, we're going to the same mind. So when we feel separate, we are not seeing truth as it is, because we are all the same. And when we can feel that commonality, that's when we are in our right mind. Another paragraph that I have highlighted right here, that I think is a very beautiful paragraph. Now, this is in the preface. Jesus writes, "The world we see merely reflects our own internal frame of reference, the dominant ideas, wishes, and emotions in our minds. Projection makes perception. We look inside first, decide the kind of world we want to see, and then project that world outside, making it the truth as we see it. We make it true by our interpretations of what it is we are seeing. If we are using perception to justify our own mistakes, our anger, our impulses to attack, our lack of love in whatever form it may take, we will see a world of evil, destruction, malice, envy, and despair. All this we must learn to forgive, not because we are being good and charitable, but because what we are seeing is not true. We have distorted the world by our twisted defenses and are therefore seeing what is not there. As we learn to recognize our perceptual errors, we also learn to look past them or forgive. At the same time, we are forgiving ourselves, looking past our distorted self concepts to the self that God created in us and as us. So as we see through our illusions, as we see the beauty in our brother, as we forgive our brother his mistakes, we're forgiving ourselves. And that is our way out of hell as it is presently manifest in this earthly plane, in this earthly classroom. What do you think, Karen? Any thoughts?
Yeah, we're on the same page. I love that part of the preface that you just read. Oh my gosh, I don't have my original book in front of me, but I remember it clearly and it had the whole thing highlighted. Oh my gosh, so perfect. And you're talking about the same thing that I have a paragraph I was going to share about interpretation because it is all about our interpretation, which is not the truth. And that's what needs to be healed. And he tells us twice in the course that anger is never justified. And he tells us at the end of the text, but there's a place in the manual. It's in the section 17. How do God's teachers deal with magic thoughts? Very similar to what you read, and it's in paragraph 8. And beginning with sentence, I don't have my glasses on, but I think it's 6. He says, if anger comes from an interpretation and not a fact, it is never justified. Once this is even dimly grasped, the way is open. Now it is possible to take the next step. The interpretation can be changed at last. Magic thoughts need not lead to condemnation, for they do not really have the power to give rise to guilt. And so they can be overlooked and thus forgotten in the truest sense. Now, this paragraph is really highlighting what you shared. And he's telling us that anger comes from interpretation. That's why it's not justified. When I get angry, I think I'm angry because of something outside of my own mind. And that is why it's never justified. It's my interpretation of what I'm seeing, and it's really not true. It's a decision I'm making always. So then he says that once this is even dimly grasped, the way is open. Once we recognize that we made a decision, it has nothing to do. We made a decision to be anger, and it's always attacking ourselves. All attack is self-attack. It comes from a decision not to be what you are, to forget the truth of who you are, to forget that I'm a holy son of God. I can't be hurt. There's nothing that can hurt me unless, as he says in here, that I give it the power. He says magic thoughts need not lead to condemnation, for they do not really have the power to give to give rise to guilt, because they're just magic thoughts. They're not real, but we give them power. And when we give them power to upset us, we believe they're real. That's the power for me. When I give them power, it's because I'm believing they're real. I'm giving them power to upset me. I'm giving nothing power. I'm giving nothing power. In truth, they're nothing, but I'm choosing to give them power. And that's when I fall into depression. That's when I get angry. That's when I get upset. And so they can be overlooked and thus forgotten in the truest sense. That's true forgiveness. They can be overlooked and forgotten in the truest sense. And the truest sense is that what my brother did has not occurred. What I think has not happened. It's always and only my interpretation. And then I'm believing my interpretation is real. So for me, this is a moment to moment practice. I think for all of us, it is moment to moment, recognizing that what I'm seeing is not the truth. The miracle is looking on devastation and reminding the mind that what it sees is false. It's not the truth. So when I don't give it power, I see, okay, here we go again. Here's my interpretation. Holy Spirit, give me your interpretation. Help me see this differently. It always goes back to that. So we're so on the same page. It's unreal. And it's so perfect because this is the lessons we came here to learn. And I think they're showing up perfectly. Thanks.
I had this conversation you made me think of, Karen. Thank you for your share. You're so wise, you're so brilliant, and I'm really digesting what you're saying because it's really helping me. Thank you so much. I had this conversation with a gentleman at the gym today, and it was very interesting. He is very traditional in his religious belief system. I don't know what form of Christianity he practices, but he's very much of a traditional Christian. And in the past, his belief system has triggered me because he spoke of original sin. He spoke of how entering into a state of grace is impossible while we're in our human body. We need to leave our body in order to find that heavenly state. Like he just started telling me about a lot of religious concepts that contradict Course in Miracles and contradict my belief system. So in the past, I think I have felt the need to speak my truth, even though it has contradicted his truth, because I got triggered by it. And today he was talking about the truth of his belief system, and I felt the commonality between his belief system and my belief system. And that felt good because I had no desire to change his mind in any way. Actually, I felt a lot of respect for his religious practices. He told me how he gets up each morning at 4:30 and he reads the Bible. He reads one page out of the Bible each day. And he has another book that I believe is religious that he reads each day. Um, he finds it important to discipline his mind to focus on God as often as possible. Because if he doesn't, it's easy for the devil to tempt him. And again, I mean, A Course in Miracles wouldn't use the word devil. A Course in Miracles would use the word ego. I mean, the discipline that he was talking about, I believe is required. And A Course in Miracles tells me that. A Course in Miracles says we are much too tolerant of mind wandering. So, what I focused upon as we were talking is I focused on our commonalities and not our differences. And at the end of our conversation, I said, keep up the good work. Now, that again, it doesn't mean that I agree with his practice, but I think when we can see what we have in common, we feel the peace, love, joy, and happiness of God, because some people are born into this lifetime as and born again Christianity is their pathway. Some people are born into this lifetime and Catholicism is their pathway. Some people are born into this lifetime and atheism is their pathway. Like, who am I to judge someone's pathway? I mean, that is not of God. When I can love the other person, see the beauty in another person, that's when I feel plugged into my God socket. And that's when I feel peace. And that's when I feel love. And that's when I feel joy. And that's when I feel clarity. So I thought that was a really nice exchange. And I mean, for me, it's very clear that A Course in Miracles is my pathway because everything in the book makes so much sense. Right, Karen?
Wow, that was so, so beautiful. And that is exactly what we're training our mind to do, because when the Course says we're much too tolerant of mind wandering, mind wandering is
Karen,
actually,
can you speak a little closer to your phone? I just can't
oh,
hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thanks. Yes, I love what you just shared. And starting out with the mind wandering, the course is really teaching us that the mind wandering is the projections. Our minds are wandering out. So we're projecting out what's really, really within and has nothing to do with anything outside of us. But what you said was so beautiful, because when we meet our brother where he is, we're not, the mind wandering is really dissolved. We're just meeting our brother where he is. And the most loving thing to do, the most kindest thing to do is see, what do we have in common here? That's same here with that. And I practice that more so when I don't agree with someone, when I know that this is not my belief, but you know what, like Glorian always shares, and it's from the Manual for Teachers, that all beliefs that lead to progress should be honored, because like you said, who am I to judge this person? This is teaching me about myself. This is teaching me about my tolerance, about would I rather be right or happy. The course says that, this is not the only way, this is not the right way, it's one way. And it kind of goes in line with everything that we were talking about, because it's teaching us to step back and be the presence, not the person. Leave that space that you were talking about earlier. When someone's upset, we can use that in any situation, whether it's a situation where we're not agreeing with someone, whether it's a situation where someone's upset, someone's angry. We can step back and leave that space for the Holy Spirit. And sometimes we don't even have to say anything. We can just smile and then say, there, keep up the good work. But that doesn't matter. The Holy Spirit will tell you in the moment what to do. But the point is that you said, what do we have in common here? Because we all have the same interests. And the Course tells us that the teacher of God, the only qualification is to see that we all have the same interests. That's it. There's nothing else. So when we see that, then we're like you said, we're closer to God, we're closer to joy, we're closer to our brother, and he's only a reflection of ourselves. So what a classroom, what a beautiful classroom. Yeah, God, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you, Karen. Thank you, thank you, and thank you for being here with me today. I just love talking with you, and I feel more connected to Source right now. Thank you, thank you. So I see Reverend Wayne in the room. I think he is the next speaker, and it is 4:01. So I will end with the introduction of A Course in Miracles, which states, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Only the love is real. Thank God for that. Thank you so much, Karen. I loved our time together. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn.